Today, we explore the eerie world of the graveyard shift, where the silence of the night can hide unspeakable horrors. These tales come from those who have experienced the unexplainable while working the late hours, from ghostly apparitions to mysterious sounds that defy logic. So sit back, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for 3 haunting true graveyard shift horror stories. As always, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more bone-chilling content. Now, let's dive into the first story. Story 1. The Ghostly Nurse. In a small hospital in the Midwest, the night shift was always the most dreaded. The hallways were dimly lit, and the silence was often interrupted by the beeping of machines and the occasional moan from a patient. But there was one area of the hospital that the staff avoided if they could: the old wing. It had been closed off for years, but rumors of ghostly sightings persisted. Anna, a new nurse, was assigned to the night shift. She had heard the stories but didn't believe them. One night, while doing her rounds, she noticed a light on in the old wing. Thinking it was a prank, she decided to investigate. As she walked down the deserted hall, she felt a chill run down her spine. The light was coming from a room at the end of the hall. She pushed open the door and saw an elderly nurse standing by the bed, adjusting the sheets of an invisible patient. The nurse turned to Anna and smiled, her eyes hollow and dark. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Terrified, Anna backed out of the room and ran down the hall. When she looked back, the light was off, and the room was empty. The next day, Anna asked her colleagues about the old nurse. They told her the story of Nurse Evelyn, who had died in that room while caring for a terminally ill patient. She had vowed to never leave her patients, even in death. The staff believed that her spirit continued to roam the old wing, tending to patients that were no longer there. Anna never went back to the old wing and made sure to avoid it during her shifts. The experience left her shaken, and she could never forget the hollow eyes of the ghostly nurse who still watched over her empty room. In the following weeks, Anna heard more unsettling stories from her colleagues. Other nurses and doctors had also seen Nurse Evelyn, always in the same room, always tending to an invisible patient. Some even claimed to have felt her cold, ghostly touch. One particularly chilling night, Anna was on duty when she heard the distinct sound of humming coming from the old wing. Gathering her courage, she peeped down the hallway and saw the flickering light again. This time, she decided to record what she saw. She slowly walked toward the room, her phone camera capturing every step. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear the soft, melodic humming growing louder. As she nudged the door open, the humming stopped abruptly, and the room was empty. Anna reviewed the footage later and was horrified to see the faint outline of Nurse Evelyn by the bed, her lips moving as if she was singing. Anna reported the incident to hospital administration, and they decided to seal off the old wing permanently. The hospital brought in a priest to bless the area and hopefully put Nurse Evelyn's spirit to rest. Though the old wing was now closed off, Anna and her colleagues often felt a lingering presence in the hospital, especially during the quiet hours of the night shift. The story of Nurse Evelyn became a legend among the staff, a reminder of the thin veil between life and death, and a dedication of a nurse who continued to care for her patients, even from beyond the grave. Story 2. The Haunted Factory. In an old manufacturing plant in Ohio, the graveyard shift was essential to keep production running smoothly. The plant was a massive building with endless rows of machinery, and the night shift workers often felt a sense of unease, as if they were being watched. The plant had a history of accidents, and it was said that the spirits of those who had died in the factory still lingered. Jake, a seasoned worker, had grown accustomed to the eerie atmosphere, but one night, something happened that he could never explain. He was working alone in one of the back sections when he heard footsteps approaching. Thinking it was a colleague, he called out, but there was no response. The footsteps continued, growing louder and more erratic. Jake decided to investigate. As he walked down the narrow aisle between the machines, he saw a shadow darting across the floor. The air grew cold, and he felt a presence behind him. Turning around, he saw the figure of a man standing there, his face twisted in pain. The apparition pointed to a machine and then vanished. Shaken, Jake approached the machine and saw a small plaque commemorating a worker who had died there years ago. The worker's name was Thomas, and he had been crushed in a tragic accident. Jake realized that Thomas's spirit was still trapped in the factory, unable to find peace. The next day, Jake shared his experience with his supervisor, who confirmed the story of Thomas's death. The workers decided to hold a small memorial for Thomas, hoping to help his spirit move on. They lit candles and said prayers, and the eerie occurrences seemed to lessen. However, the sense of unease never completely disappeared. The night shift workers continued to share stories of shadowy figures and strange noises, always remembering the haunted factory and the restless spirits that still roamed its halls. In the weeks following the memorial, the factory workers noticed other strange occurrences. Machines would start on their own, tools would go missing, and cold spots would appear randomly throughout the plant. One night, Jake and a few colleagues were working late when they heard a loud crash. They rushed to the source of the noise and found a large piece of equipment toppled over, with no apparent cause. Determined to understand what was happening, Jake and his co-workers decided to investigate further. They set up cameras around the factory and reviewed the footage every morning. What they found was chilling. The cameras captured shadowy figures moving through the factory, and in one clip, the apparition of Thomas could be seen staring directly into the camera before disappearing. The workers brought in a paranormal investigation team to help. The investigators conducted several sessions with specialized equipment, capturing EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recordings that revealed voices pleading for help and expressing pain. They concluded that multiple spirits were trapped in the factory, all victims of past accidents. The factory owners decided to bring in a medium to communicate with the spirits and offer them peace. During a seance, the medium made contact with Thomas and several other spirits. They learned that the spirits were not only victims of accidents but also felt a strong attachment to the place where they had spent much of their lives. The medium performed a ritual to help the spirits move on, and for a while the factory felt lighter. Despite the efforts to cleanse the factory, the workers remained cautious. The eerie atmosphere persisted, and new employees were often warned about the factory's haunted history. Jake, although still working the graveyard shift, always carried a small token of protection and made sure to respect the spirits he believed still watched over the plant. Story 3. The Supernatural Security Guard. In a large office building in downtown Los Angeles, the graveyard shift was manned by a lone security guard named Carlos. The building was mostly empty at night, and Carlos's job was to patrol the floors and ensure everything was secure. He had worked there for years and had experienced his fair share of strange occurrences, but nothing like what happened one fateful night. Carlos was doing his usual rounds when he heard faint music coming from one of the upper floors. The sound was old-fashioned, like a record player. Curious, he took the elevator up and followed the music to an empty office. The door was ajar, and he could see a faint light inside. As he entered the room, the music stopped abruptly. He looked around and saw an old record player in the corner, covered in dust. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and Carlos felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He turned around to see a ghostly figure of a man in a security uniform, his face pale and gaunt. The figure spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Help me," he said. Carlos recognized the man as Frank, a former security guard who had died of a heart attack in the building years ago. Frank's spirit seemed to be trapped, unable to leave the place where he had spent so many nights. Carlos promised to help and immediately contacted a local paranormal investigator. The investigator conducted a seance in the office, trying to communicate with Frank's spirit. They discovered that Frank had unfinished business, a promise he had made to a fellow guard to protect the building at all costs. The investigator helped Frank fulfill his promise, and during the seance, Carlos felt a sense of peace wash over him. Frank's spirit thanked them and slowly faded away. The building felt different after that night, lighter and less oppressive. Carlos continued to work the graveyard shift, but he never felt alone again. He knew that Frank's spirit had found peace, and he often shared the story with new employees, reminding them that even in the darkest hours, help can come from unexpected places. If you enjoyed these eerie tales, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Legendary Stories for more unsettling content. Your support helps us continue to bring you the best in horror storytelling. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are true. Stay safe and keep watching.